Capcom has been on fire recently. Last year they delivered the sublime Resident Evil 2, and a year later we've got Resident Evil 3, a remake of a classic PlayStation game. And things are a little bit silly this time out, but nonetheless very, very fun. And I have to be honest, I always thought that the mood and the vibe of the Resident Evil games on the original PlayStation was cooler than the actual play of them. I found them a little bit clunky and cumbersome, and yes, silly.
You were almost a Jill sandwich.
And I was never really that spooked by them, and it was because it was like the tank-style controls, and I always used to complain about the fact that you were just constantly moving around inside of every room looking for one interactive object that you would either be able to pick up and use in your inventory, or you would find some kind of clue that you would be able to use in another room, or you would find the health that you need, but you're always just looking around these pre-rendered areas in order to activate the next chunk of gameplay. And I found it a little bit tedious, even though there was classic horror moods created through Resident Evil back then. I found them clunky, so it's been very refreshing to go back and play these classic stories done properly.
What the fuck was that?
You play as Jill Valentine, and you play as an Umbrella security guy named Carlos, and the story lets you bounce back and forth between both characters.
Who are you? What are you doing?
Name's Carlos, and I'm saving you.
Carlos also has very interesting hair in this game. It's very floaty. It's very, like, moves with the wind, even though it's like he's got a perpetual wind machine, so it doesn't matter where he is. The hair, it's just like, wow, you're looking at the hair. It's just so weird.
Okay, I get it.
And there are definitely some really thrilling experiences to be had playing either one of these characters. It's a much larger in scope game than Resident Evil 2 was, because this time we get to see a fully infected Raccoon City, and you get to run around inside of the city streets and go into subway tracks and subway tunnels and into installations and factories and different shops. You even get a little side route through the police station that we saw in Resident Evil 2, which is kind of cool as well. And, you know, because they've expanded the area and there's lots of Raccoon City to kind of traipse around in, there are zombies everywhere. They're up on rooftops, they're in cellars, they're in, you know, the subways, they're in the sewers. You always go in the sewers in these games. You're also going to find lots of other mutated beasties and creatures that you have to kill. Of course, what happens in Resident Evil games is that it goes, you know, you go into sort of creaky architecture and haunted house type environments, and then eventually you're going to get into some pretty cool, you know, medical facilities and science research labs and stuff like that. The big story with this game is that, you know, if Mr. X was a massive threat and a just stop-at-nothing scare in Resident Evil 2 that just creeped us all out, Capcom wanted to go bigger with the Nemesis this time out, and so we get this just gross mutated beast creature that's just impossible to kill and has tendrils and snappy things and huge jaws and is unbelievably vicious. I mean, it just looks so unfair. You're running around as Jill Valentine with a knife, then you got your green herb, and then there's this massive giant creature that just looks like it would just go and squish her.
Really?
There's a lot of great weaponry. You know, shotguns I found to be incredibly effective in this game, go figure, and machine guns, and you can augment them as you go along. There's still a lot of hunting and pecking, though, to be honest. You're still looking inside of rooms for that, you know, little bit of gunpowder or some part of an explosive or some part of a formula or something like that that you'll have to put together to carry on with your adventure. And that can become, you know, a little bit excruciating as you're doing sort of loops and laps around areas looking for that one thing that you need in order to keep progressing. And you're always constantly contending with the lack of space in your inventory and having to use these chests where you dump a bunch of stuff into. And the good thing is all that stuff carries with you in all of the safe rooms that you'll find throughout the game. But those are sort of the foibles of Resident Evil carried over into the modern age. But now what we get is just unbelievably beautiful production values. Very cinematic, and even in Resident Evil 3, even from the move from 2 to 3, we see a lot more, it feels a lot more organic. The interactions between the characters, it's getting so close to photoreal, it's getting crazy. It's like we play the full motion video cutscenes that used to be a part of Resident Evil back in the day, and then the beautiful pre-rendered cutscenes that Capcom started to make. It's like we play better than those now, which is crazy, like the visuals are just so amazing. And then of course we do also get some gorgeous pre-rendered cut sequences in here as well. It's just done with such love and with such a great sort of attention to modernize this stuff and to make, these classic games feel vital and feel like they're important in this day and age. And that's exactly what they did last year, and I'm happy to say that's exactly what they've done with 3 as well. 3 is a bit of a shorter experience, though, and it's a little bit more linear. It honestly got so big and so crazy, and with this oncoming boss sequence over and over again, that it got a little cheeseball for me. It felt a little bit more like we're encroaching on the Resident Evil movies compared to just the sheer terror that I felt in 2, and then not too long ago in Resident Evil 7 as well. 3, it's like we're just escalating, and it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Not to say that the sequences aren't really well made, and I know that, super fans of 3 back in the day are going to love all of this embellishment that's done in this update. And I did too. I thought it was really, really well done. If this came out before 2, or if 2 didn't come out and rock our worlds last year, this would be much bigger of a shock and a surprise than it is. It's still fantastic, and it's still really, really well made, but it's just not as out of nowhere and oh my god, did you see what Capcom did? There's an expectation here. The thing that kind of pushes it all over the edge, though, is that there's also Resident Evil Resistance, which is this asynchronous multiplayer that Capcom has included in the package. Unfortunately, you're going to get sort of looped into a little bit of a loot box mechanic in here if you get totally sucked into the gameplay, and I could see people really getting sucked into the gameplay because it's quite cool. It's 4 versus 1. You play the mastermind if you're on the zombie side, or you play the survivors, a bunch of like teenage-looking kids that look like they're right out of a horror movie. So as the mastermind, you've got controls of cameras and traps, and you can take control of zombies and take out all of the survivors one by one. And the survivors are running around trying to activate the switches, and it's a lot of the mechanics that we would see Jill Valentine or Carlos kind of do in the main story mission. And it's fun that they're new characters with different attributes and different specialties. Some are better with melee, some are better with firearms, and they all have different special abilities. You can go into these little safe rooms and buy all kinds of weapons, a little Counter-Strike-like, and you're trying to kind of work together, activate all the switches and solve all the puzzles, and then escape a room and get into the next room. So it's kind of like an escape room mechanic where there's like a dungeon master side of it, and it was really cool. I thought it was really fun. I had some clunky issues with being online. Apparently the server connection in a couple of the games that I was playing wasn't stable, and I really hated the fact that the message was right in the middle of the screen for the whole game. It was so off-putting, and also the default was subtitles on everywhere, so there's just way too much information on screen. But still, a lot of fun to play. Now, the question I have is if Capcom is going to go through the rest of the Resident Evil games. Are they going to make 4 again? Are they going to remake 4, which I think has totally stood the test of time? They've re-released it and remastered it a bunch of times, but are they going to remake it? That would be crazy. It would be amazing to see the content of 4, which I still think is my favorite Resident Evil game, but it would be crazy to see the content of 4 remade for, I guess it will be next-gen machines. Who knows? I think I like 3 a little less than 2, but I still think if you're a Resident Evil fan, you've probably got this already, but if you're a big fan of killing zombies and running for your life and then outsmarting these beasts that will stop at nothing to get you, think you're going to love this one too. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10.